You will be surprised of the type of change that you see when inclusion is a major factor.
Welcome back to the TroopHR Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Bradley. Today I'm joined by Jasmine Moseley Beal, President and CEO of Virtue Key Consulting Group. Over the last few years, it feels like organizations have been in a constant state of transformation, whether it's adapting to new technologies such as generative AI, restructuring teams, or trying to move faster in an increasingly competitive environment. Leaders are asking organizations to change at a pace that can be hard to keep up with. But despite all those efforts, we still see a lot of initiatives fall short, not because the strategy was wrong, but because the organization itself wasn't set up to execute effectively. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. As always, on the ground floor, we start by asking Jasmine about organizational structure and how she defines it and what it means to her.
So organizational structure to me is about interconnectivity. And throughout my 15-year career, I've seen so much when it comes to where organizations have silos. And what happens is those silos, let's say, is operations. Operations has the strategy in mind, and marketing has a strategy, HR has a strategy, but it's never interconnected to where execution becomes a flawless thing, and it can be. As you know, 70% of transformation efforts fail. And they fail because of that lack of interconnectivity within organizations. So when I talk about the importance of alignment, it's about the connections. It's about knowing about the strategy beforehand for everybody that's involved within the organization and how it's executed appropriately to make sure that we get the most out of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve.
An interesting point that I have right now when we work with our customers is we're an AI infrastructure company where I work regularly. And when folks go to implement AI, we don't have to get into the merits of AI or not right now, but this change management around implementing AI, all too often I hear CEOs say, I went out, we got the tool, and then no one's using it. Could you give us some insight into what are some of the change management issues that could be original problems that you see in change management that are now being applied to AI or the unsuccessful implementation of AI in the company?
Yeah, so in terms of change management and how that's done in not the best way, I'm just going to keep it real, like not done in the best way. So as that example you talked about with the CEO saying, hey, I got the thing and I put it out there, there's a level of preparedness that has to happen. And you're thinking about your orgs and all the people that are involved. When you all of a sudden just get a random email saying this is about to happen, you're thinking as an employee, okay, how does that connect back to the goals we're trying to reach in our organization? What's my role as an employee as well? And of course, we want change to happen quick and we want it to happen fast and we want people to get it. But people have to understand their why in it and how it's going to move the needle within an organization. And CEOs have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable as well. Of course, there's the general town halls that happen where we talk about the overall strategy and what we're trying to achieve, but also too, how does that go down to the rest of the teams in the organization when it comes to goal recalibration? How does it look like when we talk about, okay, we have this new change that's happening. What does that look like in the next couple of quarters? I mean, we're already halfway through the year right now. So what does that look like in terms of what we're trying to achieve by the end of the year and how we're going to see it? And with CEOs, I want to say this too, with the changes within technology, it's important to be face first for your internal customers and also external customers. So talking to your internal customers, not only those town halls, getting with those teams to department by department and showing that they are a major factor within the change that's going to occur as well.
And when executives reach out to you to get your advice, to get your help, what are some of the ways that they articulate the issues that they have in your first call with them or your first interaction with them?
Usually what happens, and with my organization, Virtue Key, that I've ran for the last couple of years and full force within the last year or two, we're not about status quo. And we're not about what's traditionally out in the market. So usually what happens is people come to you and those executives are talking to me about symptoms that are happening. My people aren't getting it. Oh my goodness, we need more training, more training, more training. You hear that so many times. And then you have to take a step back. And I always say this, okay, what's your goal setting process look like in your organization when it comes to performance? What does good look like within the organization? And then you get the, well, I mean, we have some people put in our stuff into the, system that we have. And then you look and only 20%, maybe 15% of those people have it. And those people are usually the executive teams or even VP level executive director. But when it comes to mid-level managers, individual contributors, or employees who are direct labor, they don't have a clue. So when it comes to performance and evaluating that, you can't do that properly because of the fact that you're misaligned. No one knows what they're doing. You go to talk to those people and they're saying, let's say a mid-level manager, like, hey, I just come in and do my job every day. What does that mean? What does that mean for this year? So that's when I come in and start from the ground up. Let's talk about what performance looks like. And then it goes on to talent. Okay, now you have a performance structure. How you connect that back to talent and actually having sound conversations about talent versus the vibes of, I like this person, they're great, they're cool, but do they have the skills that we need to get to our 3 to 5 year strategy? What gaps do we need to close? Having those type of conversations are really important.
What I really enjoy is how you tie symptoms back to underlying causes or a lack of frameworks in place or structure, maybe even a better term. When it comes to setting goals, is there a particular format that you follow, or it depends on the organization? Are we an OKR, Andy Grove type aspect, or what does that look like for you?
I'm a huge fan of Mark Efron because Mark Efron is about simplicity. And that's what I always applied in my career as well. So when you think about goal setting, you do not need 20 goals. Usually when I see that, you're adding in milestones that usually go underneath a goal. It's looking at when we think about strategy, and I'm going to take it back for a little bit, the strategy formulation piece that comes with what executive leaders talk to with the board. And once that strategy formulation happens and it needs to be communicated through the organization and it's broken out by departments, what does that look like from a 3 to 5 goals max? 5 goals max. You may have less. I prefer 4. 4 is a really good number because you're really getting into the nitty gritty of what that goal is and how you're going to achieve it and how you can break it down further within your organization and giving the proper accountability. So simplicity is always key. If it's something that becomes so cumbersome that you can't even think about, like you wake up and you're like, what am I supposed to do today, tomorrow, and even next week? That you have to really take a step back and think about what do I need to do to make sure it is clear and also achievable.
It reminds me of when I was a paramedic and we went to class one day and the instructor kicked off the session. She said, today's lesson, we're going to teach everyone how to kiss. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? It was keep it simple. And now she always used to say, keep it simple, stupid. But when it came to clinical care, she highlighted that the issues with paramedics versus more basic care practitioners is they get so fixated on the advanced that they forget the fundamentals. And so when you're walking through this, keep it simple, we'll leave out the stupid part, but it really resonates with me because the change management that I've seen fail over my career has been when it's too complex. People can only change a handful of things or concentrate on a handful of things at the same time. And where I have found success is forcing your leaders to stack rank priorities because they want to change 15 different things. And it's like, okay, we'll get to that. But like, what are the most 3 important things? Because that's all you can advertise. Now, the privilege of speaking to someone like you is you have so many reps working through this type of issue with different organizations. What are some common fail states that you see aside having too many goals or no goals at all?
Some of the common fail states that I see in particular is not involving the right people. And inclusion is very important when it comes to ensuring that your strategy is executed and goals are achieved within an organization. I've seen it so many times. I experienced it firsthand too, leading talent and performance COEs, where all of a sudden you get the email or the knock on the door like, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z by this time. And it's like, okay, I have a lot of questions. I want to make sure that I understand what's going on. And you realize that there was 3 and 4 other meetings that happened where that type of knowledge would have been very important. And that's how it starts to fail. It becomes a thing where you're sitting in meetings and you hear, oh, well, operations needs to be involved this way. And, HR can come in at this time. And it's like, no, when I work with people, I say, we need every single person that you're mentioning, every department, even people that you don't traditionally think about. So think about like back in the day. This is like, I'm thinking about some movies like Wall Street, when I'm thinking about how corporate life was back in the day where, hey, the people who need to know are here and you're just here to do it. But when you think about how people operate and doing their best work, they want to feel involved and they want to feel like they are actually making a difference and can contribute. So when you talked about how there are situations where you're thinking about those fail states and people are saying, hey, we're not hitting the marks, it's because people weren't there from the beginning. So I am always heavy on the workshops and I say, hey, you might need to bring in people that you don't think about. Bring in that coordinator, bring in that individual contributor that you may say, hey, they can hear about this 2 weeks after, because you will be surprised of the type of change that you see when inclusion is a major factor.
On that note, one area that we use generative AI, but then we also bring in humans in the loop too, is anytime the people team that I oversee, we implement a major initiative. We get it to a solid point where it's like, okay, we feel like we're ready to launch. But then before we do anything, I require us to bring in employees from different parts of the business, different levels of the business, because there are so many times where HR goes to implement something, but then never really takes into account how an employee will interpret whatever it is that we're launching, right? And that inclusivity piece around getting a diversity of views at different levels of different roles so that things don't come across as overly HR centric, I think is a critical key to success. And on that point of seeing success, not just fail states, what is an example of an organization where you feel like they really did it right and it just led to a great outcome?
I remember before launching my business, and that's how I knew I wanted to do it, when I was leading performance and talent, and I was working under one of the best CEOs I know. And he's going to be like, oh my gosh, here you go on this podcast. But one of the things I did in terms of managerial courage, I'm just in this new org and I'm out there, little me, literally little 4'11" me, going up and saying, you know what would be really good if we include, and I'm talking about manufacturing folks from all levels, even somebody that was really hesitant. I remember this person was a lead in one of the plants that we worked at, and I worked in bag and box, and it's really cool to see that type of work and just bring them in for conversation. So we had different levels, C-level, VP level, and we were working on implementing in terms of how performance is viewed within the organization. And we use a lot of lean methodology too within that. So the more people that came within this, it was phenomenal to see the transformation, the participation going from maybe 40% or so at that time, was years ago, into having close to 90% of those employees into the system. The 10s usually contractors, temporary employees that wouldn't go in there, but also too the agility and the confidence that came with those employees that were working within this project too. And even outside of the project, it was like, okay, we have this fire that's happening. And that particular fire goes over to a manager, and they're like, okay, is this a part of the priorities that we're working on? That's what you want your employees to say versus, no, you just need to go and do it. And I need it by 12 o'clock. It's already 10:30 and here you go. That's not how you are able to maximize your people power, as I say. I use that example because I think about right before doing this and having that managerial courage to tell this C-suite person that, because before they had meetings about these changes and no one knew about it, even myself. And once I got that information, I said, okay, I am not confident about implementing this because I wasn't even there firsthand. I'm going through PowerPoints that, you know how PowerPoints are. They don't have all the details, not like a manual or a book. So there's a difference. When we start including folks, we start telling the story from the beginning, getting everybody together, the change is just, I can't even describe it. It is miraculous to see how you're able to execute and transform an organization.
And as we come in for a landing here, there's one other aspect that we've touched on a little bit throughout this, is the role of the CHRO. We have many senior HR executives that listen to this podcast. What advice would you give specifically to them about unlocking the people power in their organization and playing a part in this change management that we've described so far?
I've talked to quite a few CEOs throughout my time. And one of the things I always say is make sure you come in with business language, and common business language is finance. And what happens a lot, especially as HR people, a lot of our initiatives get derailed, canceled because people cannot see the connection from a financial standpoint. It's like, are you doing this just to do it, or are you doing it because it's going to make a change? And once you start speaking the language of, we're implementing this leadership development program because based off of our 3 to 5 year strategy, whatever we're trying to achieve from a top of line standpoint, we got our succession planning in gear. We know the gaps. We know the needs. Here's why we propose this. It's a totally different story than saying, let's throw something here and spend money, but not sure what the outcome is, or if the people who are participating are even going to get anything out of it as well. So that's my advice to CHROs. And also for anybody that's not a CHRO listening to this, CEOs, COOs as well. We being in HR, we are a business catalyst. We have one of the most important assets, people. In order to get revenue, we need people to be able to produce, perform, and be able to confidently be agile when the business may be taking turns due to external forces or whatever that may be. Life happens. But HR is an integral part, and HR is changing too, especially in the last few years as organizations have gone through risks, reorgs. The view of HR is not support. And I've seen this a lot too. I'm a part of councils as well. And then we're talking about stuff and I'm like, okay, why is HR down the line instead of in the main conversation? So that's my advice to CHROs and also executive teams that are looking for transformation and change.
I absolutely love that, because at the end of the day, whether your organization is working on boxes or implementing generative AI, it is all a human endeavor. And at the front of that is your CHRO leading the way. So very empathetic, and that resonates with me a lot. Now, if folks want to get connected with you, leverage you in your organization, what are the best ways to do that?
So you can go directly to virtuekey.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I am constantly on LinkedIn. I am posting about people power, change, all the cool things when it comes to transformation within organizations. as well. And guests, please don't be a stranger. I am willing to talk to anyone. I am of service, especially for organizations that are looking for a non-status quo way, aka we're not about the bureaucratic, the hierarchy. We're ready to start making some revenue and seeing some growth too within our organizations when it comes to our people.
Jasmine, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
This was really fun, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the TroopHR Podcast. If you've liked this episode, we would encourage you to like and subscribe. If you would like to learn more about the TroopHR community, you can reach out to TroopHR.com. In the meantime, keep living the dream.